What is up, YouTube? JankyYGO here. My name is Michael, and today we're talking about Summoned Skull as an archetype slash deck theme to build around. Now, I'm not gonna build a deck, and I'm not gonna show a deck built around Summoned Skull, because I want to talk about the problem with the Summoned Skull support. As most of you know, I'm sure most of you know that the Summoned Skull support isn't very good. Uh, and we're going to go into why the issue if it was. So the first things first, the first card to come out of the Summon Skull was Summon Skull himself, which is an Archfiend card, which is why we have some Archfiend cards down at the bottom, and we're going to talk about why it is. And talk about why I chose those specific cards, because technically all Archfiend cards are part of the Archfiend archetype, and all of that. But, so Summon Skull, normal, beat stick, that's all he is. Originally, this card was meta at one point, by the way. I mean, it wasn't really like, super competitive tournaments back then, but back in the day, this was meta because it was a 2,500 tribute, for one tribute. And then later we got Mikhael the Magical Mist, which target a Summon Skull or a Thunder monster, destroy all monsters your opponent controls with defense less than or equal to the attack of that monster, and you can't conduct your battle phase. So that part's awful. So, things you can do with this archetype, or this deck. Summon Skull can be searched, which is good, because of Archfiends. Since it's an Archfiend card, you can search it with the Archfiend Heiress right down here. You can also revive it from the graveyard with Archfiend's Roar. If you have any of the boss monsters, so like, you have the Ritual, the Fusion, the Synchro, the XEs, because they all are treated as Summon Skull and are Archfiend cards themselves. You can use Falling Down, which is a Snatch Steal. That's one of the benefits of this. Another benefit is you have access to these two cards, which is Commander and Palabyrinth, and I put these both here as a way to throw out Summon Skull directly from the deck onto the field. So, why did I choose? Commander doesn't do that very well, but Commander has a Tribute Summon effect that you can target a level 6 Archfiend in your graveyard, special summon and face-up defense, which lets you go into the XCs. So that's some of the plays you can do with the Archfiend, if you run an Archfiend package with Summon Skull, if you want to build this deck just for fun. And another thing that keep in mind about why you would want Archfiend Palabyrinth is you target one Archfiend, and you banish another Fiend monster you control, and then you special summon an Archfiend with the targeted monster, not the banished, so the Archfiend monster that you targeted, from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So, if you have your Commander out, you can target, like, your Heiress, your Cavalry, which you're probably going to be playing, because they're just okay-ish. Well, Heiress to your search, Cavalry is an okay card. And then this also gives all of your Fiend monsters specifically 500 attack, so it makes your monsters a little bit better, and it summons your Summon Skull from the deck. So, now we're going to get into some of the other issues with the deck itself and why it doesn't work. So, we're going to start off with the Ritual, which is Archfiend's Awakening, which is treated as a Summon Skull while it's on the field. And it can't be destroyed by battle except by ritual monsters. Can't be destroyed by card effects except for by ritual monsters. And then, if it is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you special summon the Summon Skull from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So, its effect is great. It has protection. It buffs itself and all that. And it tries to it has protection, and then if you manage to get rid of it, you get to summon another monster. All that's good. The problem with this card is that you have to use Contract with the Abyss. What does that card do, you might ask? Well, Contract with the Abyss is it can be used for any dark ritual monster. You must tribute monsters that equal exactly from your hand or field, and that's all it does. Honestly, it would be better if they gave a specific ritual for this card, one that like specifically said, like a ritual card that says specifically to summon Archfiend's Awakening, so that you can search it with pre-preparation of rites and do all of that stuff. Because if that was the case, you could run, like I said, pre-prep, which is a +1, and +1ing is really good in Yu-Gi-Oh, as most of you know. And on top of that, it could have a graveyard effect as well. That would be like, um, if it would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish to save it, even though it summons a summoned skull. Or maybe during your main phase, except for the turn it's sent to the graveyard, you can banish it, and then you can banish the ritual card to maybe add um, a level 6 fiend from your graveyard to your hand. I mean, like since the whole idea is to run this level 6 fiend engine, that could be it as well. Like that's something that they could have done, but they didn't. We're gonna go into Summon Skull's extra deck monsters now before we touch these, which are Archfiend's Manifestation. So it requires Summon Skull specifically, which is another issue, and we'll talk about that. And one dark uh, monster. So its name becomes Summon Skull while it's on the field, but it is still treated as an Archfiend card. All your Summon Skulls gain 500 attack, and if the Fusion Summon card is sent by your opponent's card effect, just like the ritual, it summons the Summon Skull from anywhere, except for the Banish Zone. So, this card doesn't do a lot, and it asks you to play a lot of resources into summoning it, and on top of that, there is no fusion card for the Archfiend archetype, because Archfiends don't, besides this card, they don't fuse really. I mean, there's a few fusion cards that are named Archfiend, but they've never been the real focus. So there isn't an Archfiend specific way card to search a fusion, which means you can't search with Eris, a card to fuse with this card, so you either have to play Polymerization, or you have to play Dark Fusion, and Dark Fusion does have a few ways to search it, and Dark Fusion is not a bad card, since it says that the monster summoned can't be targeted. The issue is, though, is that once you summon this card, because Dark Fusion and all the cards to summon it require you to use cards from your hand or field. So you're still going negative to summon it. It doesn't have a way to get you card advantage immediately, and all you're getting out of it is it boosts all your Summon Skull by 500 attack. Now with the field spell out that we mentioned earlier, it's an extra 1,000, but 3,500 attack for using 3 cards isn't worth it, even if it does replace itself when it dies. And next up is Archfiend's Call. So, it has the whole, it's treated as Summon Skull and Archfiend. It's generic. So the plus is it's generic. Any deck can make it if you want it to. Your opponent cannot target any Summon Skull you control with card effects. That's great. When you pair this with a Ritual monster, you can't, you end up in a really good spot where they can't be targeted. I believe this one says they can't be targeted by monster effects, right? Can't be destroyed by monster effects or battle. This one says they just can't be just targeted by card effects in general from your opponent. And then if it's synchro summon, it's into grave, you special summon the skull. So what's good about this is that it's still good, but it comes into with a similar issue as the ritual monster. And part of the fusion is that Archfiends don't actually have a tuner. And I know what you're thinking, well, we can just play a good, generic a good generic tuner, but the problem is all the best generic tuners are banned because of housekeep value breaks and all the ways to summon out tuners from the deck don't really work in this deck very well, because at least if you're trying an Archfiend build, if you're trying more of a dedicated Summon Skull build, you might just run a small Archfiend engine, and then, but even if you do that, you're going to run into the issue of bricking a lot. The thing is that, like, this has a decent effect for once you have an established board. The whole point of this deck is trying to get out, by the sounds of it, is you're trying to get out Call, you're trying to get out Manifestation and Awakening, and then you're going to also try to get out the Xyz, and we'll get into what that card does. So, this card, Archfiend's Call, it's not bad, it's just one of those things that it doesn't have the right traction to really get it going. So, we don't have a way to search a tuner in the deck. If you're playing the Archfiend engine, you just kind of have to draw it. You don't have a good way to really summon out multiple of these cards, because like I said, you want Awakening out, you're gonna want Call out, and you're gonna want Manifestation out, and there's no real good way to do that all in one turn, because you're gonna lose a lot of resources doing each and every one of these things, because like I said, this this card, like, if it had its own ritual, maybe one of the ritual things is if you use Summon Skull to ritual summon it, you get Summon Skull back to your hand, and that could help you fuse, and then, if you wanted to, it would help with the fusion, and when, maybe if the fusion was summoned and all that, you can, summon out, Dark, well, no, because that would be broken, but as I say, a tuner or something, maybe that's specifically an Archfiend card, or maybe it summons out a specific tuner for the Archfiend archetype that lets you easily go into this if you have a level 4, and then you could do that, and then the next thing you know is you would have to find a way to summon this card, which is Archfiend's Ascent. So, what does it do? 2 level 6 monsters, so it's generic, that's also good. And this one's probably the easiest to make as well. If a Summon Skull you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can detach from this card instead. If this card is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can switch to summon a Summon Skull from your hand, deck, or graveyard. See, what makes this card interesting is that it's the easiest to make out of these, and it's a good and it gives protection from destruction. That's great. The thing is that to make this card really useful, because being destroyed, you can easily out that. Like, most decks can out the whole uh, protection from being destroyed up to twice a turn, right? They can attack over it, or because it's only 2,500, you can attack over it. If you can't attack over it, you usually have multiple pops, or a way to negate its effect, or stuff like that. They have ways to out this card specifically pretty easily, but it gets a lot harder, obviously, if you have the Synchro out, so they can't target it, and then this, so it can't be, well, this one just protects itself, but, so, yeah, but, once you get out, these, let's say all the extra decks, right, then it has 3,000 attack, and if you have the field spell, it's 3,500, and then it can't be targeted, and everything because of Call, and then if any of them would be destroyed, you can detach material, and then if they ever go away, they, they summon the Summon Skulls. So, a definite fix of what they could have done with this is that either make a card that's always treated as Summon Skull, that is an effect monster, to help get rid of these things that maybe, like, it special summons itself, and then it helps you go into all this stuff, right? That could be it as well, because all of these, all they would do is end up protecting Archfiend's Awakening, and it would have even more protection on top of what it already has, because this one doesn't give your Summon Skull that effect. It just says it has that effect as another thing. So this card is even worse in terms of for the archetype in general. Because the whole archetype of the Summon Skull, I'm going to put archetype because even though they're technically part of the Archfiend archetype, um, is to summon these monsters and protect Summon Skull. The problem was, the problem becomes with that is, Summon Skull doesn't do anything on its own, and the deck requires you to play it. Right? It's a normal monster that's not level 4, and it doesn't have, and it's not a dragon, so you don't have the support that like Red Eyes and Blue Eyes have, and it doesn't have literally like 20, like a million support like Dark Magician has for to make Dark Magician work. It has these cards, and I know that like Archfiends specifically are like, well, and Konami when designing the support for this was like, well, Archfiends, it is an Archfiend card, so they have that support. All right, that's true, but the issue is once again is that Archfiends are they want to do something a little bit different, and if you build a deck around Summon Skull specifically, you're kind of hurting the Archfiend deck more than you're making a Summon Skull deck better. Um, and Archfiends aren't a great deck on their own anyway. They've been power crept like no other. They weren't like the most competitive deck back in the day when they got the support to make them even somewhat viable either. It was just a fun deck to play, in my opinion. But yeah, we're going to talk about these three cards that I haven't spoken about before. This card, Red Eyes Archfiend of Lightning. What a so it clearly looks like Summon Skull. It is a Gemini monster, which has its own issues, and we'll get into the issues. But its Gemini effect is literally uh, the whole Makir the magical mist. So you destroy all face-up monsters uh, with your opponent's control with lower defense than this card's attack. That's a decent effect. Um, Problem is, it's a Gemini monster, and it's not treated as Summoned Skull. It doesn't say anywhere that this card is treated as Summoned Skull. So that becomes an issue with you still have to run the original Summon Skull if you wanted to. And it's a Gemini, so its effects are slow. But if it had like the effect of this card is always treated as Summon Skull and didn't have that, let's say, once per turn, destroy all face-up monsters your opponent with lower defense than this card's attack that your opponent controls, and instead replace, like, you could special summon this card from your hand to do something else, this card would be really good for the deck. It would replace the bad Summon Skull and have a way to special summon itself, and so that if you draw it, it's not a completely dead card in your hand like Summon Skull will be. And similar with Archfiend of Lightning. Archfiend of Lightning was the first retrain to Summon Skull, and once again, it doesn't have the can't. It's always treated as Summon Skull, even though this literally looks like Summon Skull attacking. I'll put them side by side so you can look. It's literally Summon Skull attacking with lightning. So, and it has a way that, it stops targeting. It can stop targeting by if you roll a 1, 3, or 6. So it has pretty good odds of stopping a targeting effect, and then on top of that. So if your opponent targets it, it can stop it. You gotta get a little lucky, which it's a product of its time, really. But yeah, its issue is also that it's not treated as Summon Skull always, and same thing with Toon Summon Skull. And Toon Summon Skull is also really bad in general. But honestly, Archfiend of Lightning could probably get a pass with if you were just like, this card is always treated as Summon Skull, just slap that on there. You would probably run this card because even if you it's going to be a dead card in your hand still, like Summon Skull is, at the worst, if you have a way to tribute summon it, it doesn't feel as bad because it still has an effect. Sure, you lose 500 during your standby phase, you have to do it, but it still has an effect that if it's targeted by an opponent's card, you can negate it. And that's not a once per turn effect, so every time they target it, if you're lucky, you can keep negating things. And destroying the card that negated it, or that targeted it. So it has an option to kind of protect itself. You just have to be lucky. And that's still a lot better than a normal monster that doesn't do anything. And we've hit that point, right, where normal monsters aren't that bad to run, but they get significantly worse when they're level 5 or higher. Because um, Unexpected Die only searches the level 4 or lower from the deck to special summon, and Painful Decision is also level 4 or lower. So the more, so once you hit 5 and higher normal monsters, you're really restricting yourself. But anyway, that's my thought on the Summon Skull things. You guys can tell me what you think about the Summon Skull deck. If you think, what do you think it needs? Because personally, I think it needs a Summon Skull that is always treated as Summon Skull to replace this one. If they're not going to give it, like, a ton of support, if they're only going to give it, like, one extra card, that would probably be it. Because they gave it a form of summoning for rituals, for Xyz, for synchros, and I think there's an Archfiend Link monster as well, but I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with Summon Skull, but we'll look at it just to double check. Yeah. Yeah, and this is more about the chess fiends and stuff like that. But anyway, that is it for today's video, or at least this video. If it is your birthday today, happy birthday. If you want to send me any cool deck profiles or replays, emails in the description. And, of course, and as always, have a wonderful day.